Yes.
Good morning. So, what has struck you? Is there anything you remember that we have talked about this fall that you still remember and would like to lift up? This is both to remind ourselves of what we've done, but also to let me know what's sticking, if anything. And yes, I'm aware that everyone's brain is a little mushy at this point, so. Your brain isn't mushy?
No.
Okay, many of our brains are mushy. Well, I wasn't gonna say, but anyone?
What? I said that lesson on control stuck.
Okay,
Just sort of let go and we gotta take care.
that was last week.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's fresh,
I let go of
good,
everything.
good. All right, we started out in October with some stuff about scriptural interpretation with some Lectio Divina. I know Julie came in and did something with you on art. Mariana and Mary Jane did some stuff on gratitude and hospitality, just to kind of remind everyone sort of where we've been. Did any of you take anything I said about not stressing out about the holidays to heart and were less stressed? Did it
Yes.
work?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Don't get caught up. I had written down, don't get caught up in doing all the things. And I still did plenty of things, but not all the things, because that can just start working on your head and I need to do this and I need to do that and I need to do this. And
Right.
no, just really look at that and
I was struck by a common thread to all of them. And I must admit that I didn't tune in to the recordings when I wasn't here to listen to the whole session. But just to get a gist of what was going on. The common thread seems to be, this is a matter of self-expression. And that not every spiritual practice is for everyone.
Yes.
That was a thing that I don't think any of us said. But, oh, you did? Well, good for you. But yes, it was to come away from me. And I suddenly realized that back when I was in seminary, there was a big push to make sure that we students were instructed in spiritual practices. And our professors, for the most part, were somewhat caught off guard by that and didn't know exactly how to respond. Because we, Christian church disciples type people tend to be more in the head than in the heart. And the spiritual matters are a matter of the heart and not the head. It wasn't until after seminary that it occurred to me that intellectual practice is in fact a spiritual.
Yeah.
It's even a spiritual release.
Yeah.
And so I was hoping this morning that there would be a chance to say, don't sweat the details. If it's about art, if it's about study, if it's about whatever it is that rings your bell, that's your spiritual practice that is going to be your best self-care.
Yeah.
And the best care for your relationship with God and your neighbor.
Yeah, I think we can, my experience coming into seminary and through seminary as well was just that there was this kind of, and I don't know that anybody was intentionally saying this, right? But there was like this very sort of narrow definition of what being spiritual was. And it was tremendous pressure for me because I knew I didn't fit in that box the way you were supposed to fit in that box. And so I think one of the things we've tried to do this fall is just to kind of help us understand that it doesn't have to be this. It might be that. For many people, it is that, right? But it can be all of these other things as well. And that even if you think you're this way, it doesn't hurt to try other things out because you never know, right? You may have decided that you didn't like such and such a practice when you were 20. And you're a different person now, right? So it never hurts to go back and try something. So I want to keep going because this was our preface. So, and as I'm about to say, we are squishing 2 weeks into 1 week today because this is our last class and we are not having class next week on Christmas Eve because I don't know, we thought we should get to sleep an extra half hour or something. So through Advent, we've sort of shifted the secondary theme through each month. So through Advent, we have been exploring spiritual practices that for times of waiting, things that can help us be more present in waiting, things that can help us be more grounded and content in waiting. But we've also been tying those things in each week with the Advent theme of the day. So today, we're going to look at preparation as a practice as related to joy. Also going to look at watchfulness as a practice related to love. So we're gonna have kind of 2 little sections in the next 25 minutes, because then I have one last thing to say before we close. So one of the most important things about spiritual practices is that some of them, and this kind of goes back to what we were just saying, some spiritual practices are an intentional extra thing that you do, right? And we've shown you a lot of those, right? We've given you, okay, you can go this, you can read scripture with this particular structure of thinking or journaling. You can do art, you can make a list of this, blah, blah, blah. You can I don't know what they all are, right? But there are different kinds of things that is an extra thing you add, right? That is one way to practice a spiritual practice. That is one way. And just to clarify that word we've been using all fall, what is a spiritual practice? It is a thing we do to deepen our spirituality, to deepen our awareness, sharpen our awareness, right? So the other way, it's not even a way, but the other side of spiritual practice is not something that we do, but how we do things we would have done anyway, right? It's about the mindset you have, or if you will, the heart posture that we have while we're doing the thing we would have done anyway. And that's more the kind of spiritual practice that I want to talk about today. So is that something you feel like you've heard all fall? It's kind of like there's a specific activity, or there is a way of approaching your life that is a spiritual practice. Is that something anyone has noticed?
Yes.
Maybe, okay, some of you, yes, good, okay. Okay, so we're gonna start with joy, and I want you to take your blue hymnal. I should have warned you y'all on Zoom that we're gonna look at our hymnal today, but I didn't. But we will fill you in, and look, they both have one. I love that they're going to get it. This is awesome. Y'all are so good. So I want you to turn to number 142.
Just because I know I have one doesn't mean I can find it.
That's fair. We're going to read all the words to you, so it should be fine. I am going to finally, because I'm in charge today, take the opportunity for a whistling solo. This is not an Advent hymn that we sing very often, so I am not assuming that you are familiar with it, but I do want you to hear the tune before we read the words out loud, for the sake of those who may not have them in front of them, because the tune is a huge part of the reason this hymn connects to joy, partially because I like to take it really fast. So this is how this hymn goes. All right. Isn't that a fun little song? So fun. What? I love to whistle. I've been telling Deborah for years that I needed to have a whistling solo, and finally, like a couple months ago, she heard me whistling to Dick Penny. She's like, well, you are a good whistler. I've been trying to say, not nearly as well. I did eventually learn how to play a nose flute though, but it doesn't go well with lipstick. So So that is the tune. It's a fun little tune, right? It's bouncy. It's in 6/8, which is part of the reason it's bouncy, okay? But so let's take turns reading the verses. Who wants to read verse 1? Nice and loud. David, go for it. In fact,
Right, I don't have to sing it.
yeah, you don't have to sing it. So why don't we just go David, Steve, Jennifer, John, verse 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you get to the bottom, you only have to say people look east once, right? Like read that line above the notes.
So I want to read the first line of each.
Yes. And then when you get to the bottom, read the words at the top, right? Where it says people look east and sing today.
Love the guest is on the way.
Confused about our search.
Down, right down here. Do you see how there are words right above the notes on the bottom one?
People look east and people look east. I'm supposed to say lovely guest is on the way.
You're supposed to say people look east and sing today. Do you see the words right above? Point,
Oh.
see what,
the line?
right?
Sing today and then I say love is.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons we don't sing this hymn in church, because we're not used to the sopranos, altos, and baritones all having 3 different parts in a hymn.
I want this top line and then the.
Yes.
guest is on the way.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's do it.
People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able, trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today, love the guest is on the way.
Furrows be glad, though earth is bare, one more seed is planted there. Give up your strength, the seed to nourish, that in course the flower may flourish. People look east and sing today, love, the rose is on the way.
Stars keep the watch when night is dim, one more light the bowl shall brim. Shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east and sing today, love, the star is on the way.
Angels announce with shouts of mirth, him who brings new life to earth. Set every peak and valley humming with the word, the Lord is coming. People look east and sing today, love the Lord is on the way.
Shame we don't sing this.
Like barbershop protected for.
We could. It's such a, so, okay, so you see how this hymn is connected to joy? Yes. Do you also see how this hymn is connected to preparation? Right? So what are some of the ways we spend time preparing during Advent? What are the ones you saw suggested in the song? And I'm sure there are tons of others that are not suggested in the song.
Mhm.
I mean, we aren't furrows technically, so I don't know that verse 2 will apply to most of us, but everything can be metaphorical, right? How do we prepare during Advent?
Make your house fair as you are able.
Right? Make your
Mhm.
house fair as you are. That's not language we usually use, right? But what does that mean? What is
Use
the,
the winter cleaning and put up your decorations.
right? Clean up and decorate.
I didn't do any of this stuff as a kid. We had the advent calendar and I get the chocolate every day.
Right.
That's smart.
Right? Because we're getting ready. Tiny little gifts till the big gifts.
First day, like there's a certain number of days.
Well, it's commercial advent calendars
Yeah.
generally only start on the 1st of December, whereas technically the first day of Advent is 4 Sundays before Christmas, which is often in November. Yes.
Yeah.
So the church has a little bit of a chip on its shoulder about that, but we try to let it go. They stole the word Advent. What else? Right. So trim the hearth and set the table, right? This is talking about, like you said, cleaning up and decorating. When I was gonna say, when I was a kid and still when I was in my 20s and 30s and probably 40s, if I am ever home. And by home, I mean at my mom's house, in the house I grew up in, for really not just Christmas, but anytime we're having the big meal with all the people. I have always claimed as my job, being the one who kind of sets the table, because what that means is that I get to pick the fancy weird china dishes out that each thing, like this is gonna be the mashed potato bowl, and this is gonna be the green bean bowl, and this is gonna be the platter that we put the whatever on. Cause I really like fancy china, and my mom was an only child and had no cousins. So there's a lot of it at her house because it came from multiple different households, right? And so some of that can be really fun, right? Some of this preparation that we do during the holidays can be really fun. Now, one of my other jobs is traditionally stirring the gravy.
Oh, boy.
Because the thing about the gravy is if you don't stir it, it will burn or get lumpy, right? And so you stand there for a really long time because you can't make it very hot or it'll burn. You just have to keep stirring it, right? So like it's fun because it's my job and I don't have to do it that often, but it's actually not a fun thing to do, right? So some of the preparation we do during the holidays, we don't do it because it's fun exactly. We do it because it needs to be done in order for the other good thing. Like you don't want to have a Christmas dinner without the gravy, right? So somebody has to stir the gravy. So those are kind of two different ways. So what is a form of preparation that you all enjoy? Is there some?
I think
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, no, this, I mean, looking back many years, is just getting ready for the Christmas program. And, you know, being a child and then there you are up in front and then you know your parts, and you have glitter on your.
Halo.
Your
Right.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And,
Yes.
you know, and it's quiet, and then when you go home, you know, you're driving through the streets and they're all quiet, the lights are up, and it's very mystical,
Okay.
so.
Okay. So the
part
getting ready to being part of something special.
Well, it's very spiritual, I mean, you're there, and then there's a baby, and there's, you know, it's just like you're really there, but you're really not there. When you're a little.
But
child,
you really
you
are.
feel like, yeah.
Emmanuel.
Mm.
Steve.
I look east, which I take, it's a metaphor. I look away from the distractions. And one of the things that is the main marker in my adult life is, as soon as I hear music playing Christmas music at any store at all, I stop. I look away to the east, to the reason for the season, and I don't mess with any more Christmas purchases or anything else. Usually we're finished with Christmas. All of
See,
it.
that makes it really hard to shop in December. I would
Wow.
think.
Yeah, the only thing I get in December is gas and food.
Okay.
And I try to ignore the Christmas music at my grocery store.
Okay.
Because it's really not the thing that trips my trigger. And as a part of that whole exercise, I don't send out Christmas letters or cards. I send out Christmas cards at other times of the year, whenever a friend of mine needs a pick-me-up. Especially my friends in hot weather. It's nice to receive a snowy scene on a Christmas card in August.
Right? Very good. Very good. Yeah, go ahead.
I love the Christmas music, but not the music that's in the stores. So I love, you know, hunting for things like this year I found a woman playing Carol of the Bells on hammered dulcimer. That kind of thing. So, you know, having that music in my home every day during the season. And also this year, with contemplative outreach, we're have our presentation of centering prayer every morning, and that's been a great joy to me to participate in, except Sunday.
Good.
I like making things, and this has just happened recently when I finally realized that I come from a long line of makers, people that make things. So for the last few years, I've been making things mostly out of yarn. They're very simple, but something will occur to me and I'll think, oh, I could do that. So yesterday I made a yarn garland from my tree. I did the same thing last year, but it was a different color and I'd forgotten all about it. But it came to me, I saw this yarn and I went, oh, I'm going to make a garland today. And it's really fun.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Okay.
For years and years, Jennifer and I would leave Central, because we would have, I would have basketball practice in the morning, on Christmas Eve day, generally we'd have a practice. And then, and that would be early in the morning, and then we'd, reset. Jennifer might have been doing some cooking to bring things over, I don't recall that, but I'm sure she was. And then we would drive over during, Christmas Eve day. If there's sometimes we came in Christmas morning.
I grew up where we did our Christmas at our house Christmas Eve, because then on Christmas Day morning, we got up and drove the 2.5 hours down to Jacksonville where my grandma was. And so part of what we do with this holiday is travel. Getting ready to take a trip is super not stressful, right? So let's just, right, like, so some of the things we do when we prepare are joyful and enjoyable and make us happy, and we're like in the moment and doing the thing, and we're just, I'm just here to make something beautiful. And some of those things are stressful. And sometimes even the ones that could be enjoyable are stressful, right? If our, and this goes back to kind of what we talked about three weeks ago, right? That if you're like trying to meet some standard that isn't reasonable or realistic or even makes any sense, if you're trying to do all the preparing by yourself and don't have any help, and you feel like there are other people who, especially if you feel like there are other people who could help but are not, right? That could be stressful, right? I don't know if I'm talking to anybody in the room right now. I'm looking at one in particular. At 3:30, you can help someone be less stressed by coming to help decorate for tonight's party. So
Here, this is talking about how one's mind sometimes tends to wander. I'm just looking over here and going, all the tables.
right?
So we move the table.
Yes, there's a reason we're having this conversation right now, okay? So sharing the preparation is a wonderful thing, but I think the other thing, right, when we're doing something, whether it's stirring the gravy, whether it's driving farther than is really very pleasant, when we're doing the things that have to be done that aren't inherently enjoyable, the way that can become a spiritual practice of preparation is to keep coming back to the why and or the who, right? Like, who am I?
Yeah.
Like, you might decide, I'm gonna make this thing out of yarn, and it might take 16 hours to do it. And by hour 3, you might be like, oh, why did I decide to do this thing? But if you think about the person you decided to make it for, right? And stay focused on that person. You could even knit as prayer, right? So just to remind ourselves, okay, this is really annoying and the thing won't stay on the thing, and I'm gonna have to go get a different thing to stick the thing. But I know that these people, whoever they are in your head, or even if that person is yourself, right? If you live alone and you're like, I know that I will feel very happy if this space looks the way I'm hoping to make it look right now, right? And I know that that sense of peace will remind me of Emmanuel, right? This is what we were talking about 3 weeks ago, looking for Emmanuel. So what do we do when our preparation activity is making us more anxious than it is joyful? Does anybody have techniques? I just sort of walked you through that, but I don't know if that works for you.
I think you have to look at the end. I
Okay,
mean, it's,
remember why?
and these basketball practices on the day of.
I can't believe the parents let you do that, but
I
okay.
know.
Are nuts. Well.
Christmas Day, you know, but
I mean, I'm
You know,
on
there was-
Walmart's
there was
clothes
one,
that
it
day.
snowed and we were coming over the mountains, we were late, and Kay wanted to have dinner, 12 o'clock. And my father said, no, and where's my father in Kay's house?
Uh-huh.
My mother-in-law's house, father-in-law's house, and he said, no, we've gotta wait. And that was sort of a black.
Mhm.
for Kay.
Well, but poor Kay might have needed to think about the reason for the meal, right?
I don't know.
The reason for the meal is not the meal. The reason for the meal is the family around the table, and if they're not all there, I mean, I'm on your father's side here. Sorry, John.
We were that. But we were going through snow and that's when there were only two.
Right.
Mm.
And there were
Right.
big trucks in front of us.
You weren't
and
choosing to be late because you wanted to disrespect John's mother. Dave,
Then we have to think back, what sort of person she was, which everything was always clean and always neat.
well,
When in my house, it was not always clean and always neat. So
okay,
we have to
okay.
adjust.
yes, David.
Well, I was just gonna say that, okay, so my recollection growing up is that, yeah, I guess I'm, at least growing up, I wasn't much into ceremony, like, in other words, it was kind of like every year was like kind of trying to recreate this, and there is a lot of stress surrounding it. And I mean, to a large extent, yeah, I kind of boycotted it. I was kind of like, I don't like, what's all
Right.
this? It's just like, I don't.
Why,
know
why
what
are
this is
you
all
trying
for,
so
like,
hard to, yeah.
You know, not that I didn't want to participate or didn't want, but I was just like,
Mhm.
in other words, so I think the people that are like the super organizers that want to have everything perfect, which my sister is like that. It's
These
like,
people have names, don't they?
her name's Elizabeth.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Yeah,
and-
so Elizabeth with an S and
Nice.
an C, and so she, okay, so. Not that she was even an organizer, then she's 2 years younger than me, but she's just that kind of person. But the point being is that the super organizers, whoever they may be, whatever their name is. Accept the fact that maybe not everyone is in their program or to their level of their
Right.
program. And then if their program, if whatever vision they have isn't fully realized, that's okay. It's like
Yes,
that they don't have to
right?
be so upset if every single thing they had planned doesn't. come to fruition.
Exactly. So it's like, we can all aim for our kind of Christmas as long as we remember the point is that people are being together. And so we're all being ourselves. And that means the final product is gonna be a compromise of what we all are capable of. Kathy?
Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her.
We're sitting there under the tree, looking at the lights. Yes, okay.
And just to add on, the last many years, our Christmas dinner at my grandparents' house, where everybody gathered, was often takeout barbecue that my aunt and uncle brought up.
It doesn't have to be as hard as and I think there are some of us who,
Yeah.
to shorthand this, like this Protestant work ethic, Puritans didn't even have Christmas, right? But this idea that we have to earn a peaceful, wonderful holiday by working really hard to make it happen. Like, we don't say that out loud, but a lot of us act like that's what we're doing.
Mm.
Okay, I want to move on because we still have next week to do. So let's talk about watchfulness. As a practice, and this is one we could have had like an entire month on watchfulness, but we instead will have 10 minutes. I want to talk about watchfulness, and that word can mean a lot of things, right? There are two major ways that I want to talk about it right now. So first, let's look at, whoa, I turned right to it. I didn't even do that on purpose. Let's turn to Matthew 24, which on page 27 in the New Testament section of that Bible.
Towards that.
All right.
Yeah, they start with 1 again at the beginning of the New Testament, which is really confusing. So. All right. So Matthew 24, can I have somebody read verses 32 through 35? And then we want to do the next section, which is longer, 36 through 44.
I volunteer. Lesson of the fig tree, is that where we're gonna start?
Yes, so you do that first paragraph right there.
Okay. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that.
It's key.
Key.
There's a little note that happens to
What
be,
is that thing?
it's a note. They're by the alphabetical. It's a tiny little Y is what it is, but just ignore it.
Okay. You know that he is near at the very gates. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away.
All right, who wants to read the next section? Okay, all the way to the next page through verse 44.
But about the day and hour, no one knows, neither the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah were, so will, for as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together, one will be taken and one will be left. Keep awake therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour.
Okay, thank you. So there's a lot there. There's a lot that we could unpack. Yes, it is weird that Jesus is comparing himself to a thief, but and yes, there's some imagery here that plays into ideas of the rapture. But the thing I want us to pull out of here is 2 points. Is 2 points, right? We don't know. We're waiting for something that we don't know when it's coming. Even in the sense of Advent, right? And I preached on this the first Sunday of Advent, right? When they said, we know what day Christmas is, we know where it falls on the calendar. We don't necessarily know what day Christmas is actually coming. We do not know actually when Emmanuel will appear. But we are also watching for signs. Okay, so part of the watchfulness of love is that we're keeping our eyes open, we're staying awake, and noticing what often is just right in front of us, right? Like we're like, oh, when's God going to show up? Well, were you watching? Did you see? Because it just happened, and it happened over here, it happened over there, right? And it's like we don't always recognize the signs, right? So part of it is just keeping our heart posture, our mindset to expect to see that, because that helps us see it. If we can assume that, yes, there are signs of God's love all around us, all the time. If we don't expect to see that, if we're convinced that we will never see that, we probably never will. Because that's just how our brains and our eyes and our hearts work. But so part of the practice of watchfulness is keeping our eyes, the eyes of our hearts, as we sometimes call it, keeping the eyes of our hearts open to the signs of Emmanuel, of God in our midst. We're going to speed through because we're behind. So I should turn now to Psalm 139. Which is before Proverbs, which starts on page 577 in the Old Testament section.
What's on?
Psalm 139. We're just going to read the first 6 verses, I guess. Yes. Psalm 139. I thought you were telling me you had one of the Bibles that had some of the pages taken out, because I know we have at least one that's missing a little section. Would you like to read that? Okay, just those 6 verses right there.
O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it.
Thank you. So I want to just sit with that for a second. Because part of love for us as unique individuals, all of us, created in God's image, part of love is being seen and known.
Mhm.
And this verse speaks to being seen and known by God in ways that we may not always remember that we are, but we are. But the other place we can then take that with watchfulness as a spiritual practice is to try to love other people in this way that God loves us. To really see them and really know who they are. Pay attention to the details, right? Like we all, I mean, even in this church, right? We all know each other, kind of. We don't necessarily remember everybody's name all the time. Most of the time we might, but how well do we really know? How do we know what the triggers are that might remind someone of a grief?
Mhm.
Do we know somebody's special little hobby that you could bring up at some point and see their face light up? So part of being loved by God is to be seen and known and loved in our particularity as who we are.
Mhm.
I'm wondering does anybody remember a time when someone paid attention to something about you that made you feel seen and loved for who you are?
Sure. Okay. Well, just recently, there's a friend of mine who I call up and she doesn't answer the phone a lot, but every now and then she does. And I was really like I've said to other people here, like, I wasn't coming here for a few months just because I couldn't afford a bus pass. And I was definitely going through all kinds of other struggles during that period. And I was just kind of at the point where I was pulling out of it. And when she answered the phone and you know, I started talking about this and that, whatever's going on. And she said, I've known her for a long time. She said to me, David, you know, you're brilliant. You know, and she said other praiseful things, and I'm not used to hearing that from people all the time. And it really was what I needed to hear right then, you know, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So I don't get it, I don't seek it, but when it comes sincerely,
Right.
especially from someone who's known me a long time,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
does really, you know, make
Well,
some impact.
and yeah, and that speaks to another way of being seen and known. Sometimes other people see things about us that we either don't know about ourselves or don't believe or don't remember about ourselves. And so to have someone tell us something about us that reminds us who we are is such a precious gift.
Mm.
Kathy?
My grandmother was once asking me about a friend of mine, and she goes, "Well, is he weird?" And I thought a moment and said, "Well, he's weird like me." And she just looked at me and goes, "But you're not weird." That's like the most wonderful, loved thing that anyone ever said.
Oh, that's so lovely. And probably helped her knowing you helped her then know him, I imagine. So that's Steve.
Christmas of 73, I think. My dad had loaned me his airplane so that I could, as soon as, you know, Sunday was over with, I could jump in his airplane and join the rest of the family who had all gone to Stockton, Kansas to be with grandma and grandpa. And I only got halfway there and couldn't go any farther because fog. Visibility was impossible, and that it was only going to get worse over the next couple of days. So I turned around and I flew back to Enid, Oklahoma, my home base, and called them and let them know, well, I stopped somewhere where I had some visibility and apologized for not making it. And my dad put grandma on the phone and she was terribly worried because it was so soupy where they were. And she was glad that I was sensible and she complimented me about that. But then she called me in my apartment back in Enid, just off campus, that evening and said that it just occurred to her that if anybody couldn't make it to Christmas, but could handle being alone on Christmas, the only one in the family she was confident could, it was me.
Aw.
And Merry Christmas, she said.
Mhm.
It was the best Christmas I ever had.
Good. It's such a gift to be seen and known and loved. And I think it's important to say, as we have said about all the spiritual practices, right? Some of them work better for some people and others for other people. Our brains do not all work the same way,
Exactly.
right? Some of us are much more likely to notice little details than others, right? A lot of people see life as kind of a big, what's the, no, the art style that's
Mural.
sort of fuzzy.
Oh,
Impressionist.
Impressionism, yes,
Oh.
right? For some people, life is a big impressionist, like there's, like maybe this is a house and that was a person and I'm sure they were lovely, but do I remember their name? Do I know anything about them? Probably not, right? Whereas other people are much more, is it the pointillist now? Although that's not really detailed, right? But so it's not easy for some of us to notice and remember details about other people.
Mhm.
Some of us are better at that than others, but it is such a gift when any of us can do it,
Mhm.
right? And so, and I know, I think about, John, I'm gonna wake you up. I'm gonna talk about you now. I'm gonna talk about you now, John, because I think John Layton is a person who often sees things in that big impressionistic picture, and yet I watch him interact with visitors sometimes, and as soon as he finds a point of connection,
Mhm.
he's gonna remember who that
Mhm,
person
mhm.
is. And he's lived in this community long enough that he often will find one, right? Depending on who the person it is and if they're from here or from someplace else. But so part of it is connection, right?
Mhm.
You know, we're all people. We don't generally connect with each other because we're all human beings. It's like too vague of a concept to feel very powerful, right? But when we drill down into the details of who we are and we find those little things, and it's often, right? It's often something that that is a detail of our life that we're aware of having formed who we are. I remember I was never great friends with him, but I remember the day in college when I knew Seth Hauser before that, but at some point we discovered that both of our parents were sociology professors and both of us were brought up listening to folk music like Peter, Paul and Mary. And, you know, and I'm like, oh, you're my people, aren't you, Seth? Right? Because we had this similar formative experience. So it is easier to remember when it's a point of connection. But I also think it's almost more important to remember it when it's something outside of our own experience, right? Because so often we think that to be, and I mean, I'm gonna just straight up blame Jesus for this, right? And he was quoting people, so maybe it's not his fault, but this idea, you know, we say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay. Right? They might not like, right? Many of you love coffee. You think you should give me coffee, but you don't because you know I hate coffee. Right? It would not be loving to like give me a little gift basket full of a bunch of different kinds of coffee. I would give it away. Right? And so we do have to pay attention to those details that aren't the same so that we can properly honor people in each of our own particularity. So this, it is a spiritual practice. It's a relational spiritual practice. It is grounded in what we read from Psalm 139, right? It is a way of loving the way God loves. So, and it's sometimes very hard, but sometimes it's very easy. So So watchfulness and preparation, and I just want to say this one little thing. I didn't actually say this out loud, although it's in my notes. In some ways, Advent is getting ready for company, right? Jesus is coming, we're getting ready for Jesus to come visit. And I think one of the ways that preparation and watchfulness can come together, we talked about this a while back as well, I think when Mary Jane was doing her session about hospitality. There are people you know well who may come to visit you. And because you know them well and you love them well, there are particular things you may do in your preparation that are specifically tailored to welcome them. And that's another way that we prepare and we welcome people for all that they are, because we know, right? And so, you know, it may just be, well, so-and-so's coming, we gotta have such and such drink in the fridge. Or, you know, I know that they're hypoallergic, so let's get out those other sheets or that other pillow, or, right? Just so there are things that we do to add those special little touches because we know what various people's different needs and desires are.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, I want to close that. I just want to give us, now that I've been talking the whole time, so you probably haven't thought a lot more about the original question. Anything else from the series as a whole that we're closing up today? Spiritual practices? Anything else that occurred to you? Okay, I wanted to kind of give you a sense of where we're going, which I guess is figured out. So we will not have class for the next 3 weeks, not on Christmas Eve, not on New Year's Eve, and then not on January 7th. We will start back up on January 14th. And we're going to be doing Bible study again. We're going to start each day with a new little prayer practice. We're going to keep our tree, but we're going to take down the words and the other little tree and all of the leaves. That's going to turn into a prayer tree. You know, every Sunday when we're in church, we share prayers. We say, God, in your mercy, hear our prayer. We say, God, with joyful hearts, we give you thanks. Okay, so we're going to start each day. You're going to have little leaves, and we're going to ask each person to do one of each week. And you can have a couple minutes to write them down. You can then share them out loud or not. That is up to you. And then we're going to ask you to put them on the board. You can put them face up. You can put them face down. It's totally up to you. We'll just assume that everyone can respect something that's upside down. It's not really intended to be read. And if it's super confidential, first of all, don't bring it up in Sunday school. Second of all, take it home with you if you really want to. But the idea being that we're going to build a little prayer tree there. But you, I'm sure, have noticed that our concern list, our God in your mercy, hear our prayers, are always more numerous than our God with joyful hearts, we give you thanks prayers. So part of what we want to do is just keep ourselves balanced by having each person find something that is a prayer of petition and something that is a prayer of thanksgiving each week. So that will be kind of our opener. Those of you who are on Zoom, we will have extra little leaves in the room, and you can share yours either by speaking them or putting them in the chat, and someone will write them on leaves and put them up as you so desire. You obviously can also write them down at home. You might have a little notebook. There's something in the chat. We need to know what that is.
Oh, we probably do.
Ah, got it. Way back when we were doing hymnals. And then we're going to do Bible study. I am in the process of collecting a variety of study Bibles. What is a study Bible? This is not a study Bible. This is just the Bible, which is great. A study Bible, and this one, to go back to he versus hey, right? That was confusing. They're not usually like that because it doesn't usually make a word like that one did. But if you look, it was in Matthew 24. If you look down at the very bottom, right? This will kind of require many of us to have good glasses on. All through this page, right? There are little, and it doesn't matter what page you're on. If you look, you can see little little tiny letters. They're always in alphabetical order. That's how you find them, right? That's how the alphabet comes. And there's little tiny notes at the bottom of the pages that are connected to, they're basically footnotes. And the ones in this Bible, again, this is not a study Bible. This is the New Revised Standard Translation. It comes with these notes, which are pretty much always about textual discrepancies in the manuscripts that the translation was made from. So they'll say some versions of this text say it this way. They made a choice. They want you to know what it was, right? So that's just about disclosure about translation. A study Bible will have other notes that kind of give more context. They'll explain a word. Some study Bibles are created from a particular perspective. And so we'll have some, I'm hoping to probably get, some of them will be other translations. I'm probably on the fence, haven't ordered it yet, but there's a thing called the First Nations Bible. That is at the moment just, I think just the New Testament, which is fine because we're going to be going through the Gospels. It's a translation written by a giant committee of translators and indigenous religious leaders. And so we may have one of those in the room. I have one at my house that we're going to use. I may get the inclusive language translation, which is also a thing. There are a number of different things. And so what we're going to do is just start at the beginning of Matthew. Someone will read a section and then everyone will look at their own little thing and see if there's any interesting note that should be shared with the group. Okay. I'm going to give one of you my new interpreter's Bible commentary Bible that will give you, you're not going to want to read the entire column and a half about each section. But that one will be useful if you have, if somebody has a note and then you're like, but what about this? And that one will be useful to like, oh, well, do they explain that in here? Because it's going to be more information. Good morning.
Good morning.
So that is where we're going to go. It is my hope. It may or may not be obvious, but the goal is that this version of a class is slightly more self-sustaining and lower maintenance. Tessa's going to be gone. I'm going to be gone for 6 weeks. Mary Jane's going to help. Steve's going to help. I'm hoping Marianne is going to help. Has anybody talked to Marianne and Mike? I really should have called them.
We'll all help ourselves.
Yeah, and y'all will all help yourselves. So that is the plan. There is no schedule. You'll start at the beginning of Matthew. You'll get as far as you get that day. Somebody will notice that it's okay, 10 after 10, we should be done. And then the next week you'll pick up where you left off. So somebody will need to remember where you left off.
Why Matthew?
Because it's at the beginning. We're going to do all of them. We're going to do,
I'll think of Mark.
it's 10 after 10. We are having this conversation later. So my friends, don't put Steve in charge of timekeeping. I'm just going to say it. Don't do it. So some of us are more aware of it than others. All right. So thank you. Recording. Goodbye, recording. Turn off the recording.
Yes, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Started.
We're getting there, Steve.